welcome to our English News Bulletin broadcast to you from Canal Algérie. First, to the headlines. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, addressed a message of condolences to the family of the late Mujahid or war veteran Abdelhamid Sid Ali, the last member of the political bureau of the Movement for the Triumph of Democratic Freedoms. The National People's Assembly starts the festivities on the occasion of the International Women's Day. The Algerian women's role in all sectors is highlighted, notably in the economic sector. Ongoing protests in Morocco, both inside and outside of the country. The protesters denounce the Makhzen regime, which further drowns the population in misery. Good evening, those were today's headlines. First, the Mujahid or war veteran and last member of the political bureau of the Movement for the Triumph of Democratic Freedoms, Sid Ali Abdelhamid, passed away on Sunday. On this painful ordeal, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, sent a message of condolences to the family of the late, saying that Allah Almighty wanted the Mujahid Sid Ali Abdelhamid to join his comrades, the martyrs and Mujahideen. The late was one of the prominent figures of the November Revolution. He was an early activist in the national movement, the last of the members of the Central Committee and Political Bureau of the Algerian People's Party and the Movement for the Triumph of Democratic Liberties. In his message, the President of the Republic further wrote that during his rich career, he was among the first free revolutionaries to be committed with conviction and patience to the path of freedom. President Tebboune expressed once again at the end of his message his sincere condolences to the family of the late, his relatives and his comrades, praying Allah Almighty to welcome him in his vast paradise among the valiant martyrs. On Sunday, the last member of the political bureau of the Movement for the Triumph of Democratic Freedoms, the war veteran Sid Ali Abdelhamid, passed away. With commitment, abnegation, courage, perseverance, and militant rigor, he was also one of the first founders of the Revolutionary Committee for Unity and Action, with Mohamed Boudiaf, Hussein Ait Ahmed, Hussein Lahwil, and Dakhli Mohammed, known as Bashir. The late was born on December 26, 1921 in Algiers. He was an accomplished sportsman in gymnastics and basketball, where he played for the USMA d'Alger during the late 1930s. He was awarded the Medal of the Order of National Merit with the rank of Al-Ashir in recognition of his positions and his struggle for the liberation and recovery of national sovereignty. Let's have more insight on the late Sid Ali Abdelhamid's rich career with this portrait compiled by our colleague Nabil Hamadash, story by Melissa Kubash.
Algeria has lost one of its historical figures, a symbol of Algerian militancy and nationalism. One of the important members of the Movement for the Triumph of Democratic Liberties, Sid Ali Abdelhamid, has passed away at the age of 100 years. The late's militant journey started at the end of the 30s with the North African Revolutionary Action Committee, CARNA, then the Algerian People's Party, finally the Movement for the Triumph of Democratic Liberties, before joining our glorious revolution. Born in 1921 in the Kasbah of Algiers, Sid Ali Abdelhamid was a founding member of the Action, secret Algerian newspaper. He was also present at the creation of the Special Organizations meeting, led by Mohamed Belouzdad, and the Zadig meeting in 1948 alongside Hussein Ait Ahmed, before getting arrested in 1950. Sid Ali Abdelhamid joined the Central Committee, then became a member in the political office and held the first meeting alongside Hussein Lahwil and Boudiaf to create the Revolutionary Committee of Unity and Action. The late was then arrested and spent several years in the French occupation's jails. namely the Buswig. Only a few months before his death, Sid Ali Abdel Hamid called on the younger generations to cling to the values transmitted by our martyrs and war veterans. The late will be forever engraved in the national memory, alongside his career and sacrifices made for his country.
Concerning the parliamentary activity, the National People's Assembly launched on Sunday the celebrations of the International Women's Day under the theme "Where the Woman is the Society." The ceremony was attended by the President of the National Assembly, Brahim Boughali, the Solidarity Minister, Kautar Kriku, the Environment Minister, Samia Mwalfi, as well as the Minister of Relations with the Parliament, Basma Azwar, along with several women representatives of civil society. During his speech on the occasion, Brahim Boughali highlighted the Algerian women's role and their contribution in the building of the country's sustainable development process. He furthermore said that the new Algeria aspires to accomplish great achievements in the civilizational and democratic spheres, as promised by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, who gave the Algerian woman her well-deserved position alongside her brothers. Brahim Boughali concluded his speech by stressing that the Algerian woman has proved that she is up to the different challenges and can be the milestone in the process of building the new Algeria. In the same context, the Solidarity Minister, Kautar Kriku, hailed the Algerian women's achievements on the occasion of the International Women's Day. The Algerian woman who reiterated her commitment to the building process of the country in line with the November 2020 Constitution, concluded Kautar Kriku. In his capacity as Special Envoy of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad Minister Ramtan Al-Amamra paid a working visit to the brotherly Jordanian Hashemite Kingdom. Al-Amamra was received at Basman Palace by the Jordanian ruler Abdullah Al-Thani ibn Al-Hussein, to whom he conveyed a message from the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, and conveyed also his fraternal greetings and best wishes on the occasion of the centenary of the Jordanian Hashemite Kingdom. The Jordanian sovereign Abdullah Al-Thani in return asked Ramtan Al-Amamra to convey his sincere greetings and best wishes to the President Abdelmajid Tebboune and to the Algerian people for more progress and prosperity. Still in Jordan, where the Foreign Affairs Minister held talks with his Jordanian counterpart, Ayman Hussein Abdullah Al-Safadi, the talks were on the ways to give more impetus to cooperative relations between the two countries in light of the upcoming bilateral events, namely the 9th session of the Joint Commission on Economic Cooperation. For his part, the Interior Minister Kamal Beljoud started on Sunday a 3-day official visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia at the invitation of his Saudi counterpart, the Emir Abdulaziz bin Saud bin Naif bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. Ways to strengthen bilateral cooperation on issues of common interest will be discussed during this visit. On this occasion, the Interior Minister Kamal Beljoud paid a visit to the World Defense Show organized by the General Authority for Military Industries in the Saudi capital Riyadh. This show revolves around the future of the military industry, where technical novelties concerning the various defense systems were displayed. The Interior Minister also visited the aisle belonging to the Saudi Interior Ministry. The independent members of the Council of the Nation held a meeting to announce the formation of the Parliamentary Group for Independence in the Senate, and that in the presence of 12 of the 14 members. After the official announcement and the plebiscite of Battahar Lazarag, As chairman of the parliamentary group, the members issued a statement in which they consider the announcement as a new milestone on behalf of the new republic, given that it is a first since the creation of the Parliamentary Group for Independence in 1998. The Moroccan people are still taken to the streets in order to denounce the Makhzen regime and its decisions that keep drowning the Moroccan population into social misery. The details with Melissa Kebash.
A restless Moroccan social front keeps warning against the Makhzen regime, denouncing the high cost of living, the restrictions of fundamental rights, public and trade union freedoms, the imprisonment of freelance journalists, the censorship of online media, and the indictment of artists and citizens, as well as ongoing kidnappings and torture for human rights activists and any citizen demanding social justice. Meanwhile, the royal family, namely the two sisters of Mohammed VI, have transferred their assets to the Netherlands, while Princess Selma created a foundation in this country so as to transfer part of her assets held abroad. The other sister, for her part, Lala Asma, holds a similar structure since 2019. This family relies on social injustice and corruption to make fortunes. On the international level, Morocco has been accused of passivity following the attempt of 2,500 migrants to cross the border fence of Melilla. The attack, as qualified by the Spanish government, is a clear intention on the part of Rabat to put pressure on Spain, in a context marked by the deterioration of relations between the two countries. According to Spanish government sources, it is impossible for Rabat to not detect 2,500 people at their own border. Across the Atlantic, members of the American Congress have called on President Joe Biden to not conclude any arms agreement with Morocco, fearing the use of these weapons against the Sahrawi people, hoping that the crucial role played by the United States in this conflict in Western Sahara can allow the Sahrawi people to exercise their right to self-determination. In a letter recently addressed to President Biden, 11 members of the American Congress expressed their concern when it comes to the policy established by the United States in Western Sahara, alongside the agreements between Rabat and Washington related to the sale of weapons to the Kingdom of Morocco.
Moroccans living abroad joined the demonstrations against the practices of Al-Makhzen. A gathering was organized yesterday by the Moroccan community in front of the Moroccan embassy in Paris. They point the finger at the repressive practices of the Moroccan regime. Laetitia Sidqawi.
Oppression, repressive practices, detained journalists in unhuman conditions, and much more dictatorial acts were the reason behind the call from dozens of human rights associations active in France for a demonstration denouncing the acts of Al-Makhzen regime and demanding the release of all political prisoners in Moroccan jails. We want to express our solidarity with everything that is going on in Morocco, especially the imprisoned journalists like Omar Radi. We see that freedoms in Morocco are scandalously shrinking day by day. We have also come to denounce the complicity of the French power with the Moroccan regime.
La diffamation est devenue le principal moyen de pression de la classe dirigeante.
Distortion has become a main means of pressure from the ruling class and the Moroccan power. We are here to fight against violence against women and the rule for limiting freedom of expression. Moroccan powers massively use criminal methods. Human rights activists are experiencing unhuman detention conditions. Many of them are in isolation that led to hunger strikes, and the communist parties called for their immediate release. Human rights associations denounce the spectacular repressive tightening of freedoms, which isn't new to the Makhzen dictatorial regime given the long history of an authoritarian power. Prosecutions, imprisonment of independent journalists, repressive laws, censorship of online media, and indictments of artists and citizens on spurious charges.
Nous, depuis de très nombreuses années, on est aux côtés du peuple marocain.
We have been on the side of the Moroccan people for years against repression and against the Makhzen regime. We denounce the policy of France, a policy that supports and is in accordance in different levels with the Moroccan dictatorship. Kidnappings, torture, arrests, and convictions are all punishments reserved for journalists, YouTubers, and human rights activists, or every citizen demanding social justice. The list of victims of brutality continues to grow. The demonstrators remain determined to continue the mobilization to demand the release of political and opinion prisoners, including Omar Radi, Suleiman Raissouni, Toufiq Bouachrin, and the list goes on.
The reason we are here is the internationalism. Political prisoners like Omar Radi are people fighting against a dictatorship. What we can say here in France, that the best amplification of dictatorship is Macron, who pretends to be a liberal and democrat. In fact, he's one of the supporters of the dictatorial Moroccan regime.
We have been aside Moroccans in all demonstrations near the embassy for the liberation of all prisoners like Omar Radi and prisoners from Marif, Zafzafi, and those with him who were sentenced heavily. The French government's support of this regime is absolutely scandalous. Protesters also denounced justice at the behest of an autocratic power.
Let's now have a listen to the statements made by the Democratic Approach comrades on the arrest of the comrade Abdullah Al-Harif on Sunday.
نحن الآن أمام ولاية الأمن طنجة نؤكد للرأي العام على أن الرفيق عبد الله الحريف بعد أن قام بتأطير الندوة البارحة.
We are now in front of the state of security in Tanja. We assure the public opinion that Comrade Abdullah Al-Harif, after leading a seminar on Saturday, was arrested from the hotel for no reason other than the fact that he had a check that he paid 2 months ago and they came to arrest him. And we would like to demand the error correction in which the system of all kinds has occurred, the judicial system or the persecution. So we demand the release of the comrade who is still detained at the state headquarters, but we are still waiting for this misery in which we live to end. This is nothing but a response to the success of the symposium organized by Comrade Abdullah Al-Harif. The Makhzen is trying to thwart our resolve and to tarnish the reputation of honest and loyal people. We deny and affirm that there is no such fabricated case, where it is mentioned that the detainee had a desire for money. When he gave up the money in favor of the Equity and Reconciliation Committee, he made it clear that he was with the popular groups and the working class in order to obtain their rights. Our right is to build the party of the working class until all just and legitimate demands are met. Moroccan people would love to live free and have a decent life. We refute this sophisticated press that wants to tarnish the reputation of people.
الذي يمتلك مجموعة من الإمكانيات المادية التي تخلى عنه، ونذكروا كذلك لو كانت عنده رغبة في الفلوس وفي الأموال أن لجنة الإنصاف والمصالحة باش نذكروا بها هذه أن الرفيق تنازل عن الأموال اللي كانت خصتها هيئة الإنصاف والمصالحة، وهذا باش يبين على كتعويض، وهذا باش يبين بأن الطينة نتاع المناضلين الصادقين الذين اندحروا طبقيا.
إضافة يمكن نقولوا إلا هذا اعتقال تعسفي وانتقامي من اطارات ديال الى الامام كيقاوموا من اجل الحريه والكرامه.
This is nothing but an arbitrary and retaliatory arrest of one of the fighting comrades for freedom, dignity, democracy, and human rights. The comrade moral is very high. He left me his medicine because he had several heart operations, and we like to persevere so that the comrade comes to us with his head held high as we have entrusted him.
طنجة ولا بالنسبة للهيئات الحاضرة تحية للإطارات السياسية اللي تواجدت معنا في هذه الصبيحة ديال الأحد اللي كنعرفوا.
New protests are planned in Morocco. Drivers transporting passengers and goods will begin on Monday a strike of 72 hours renewable in order to express the non-satisfaction of their demands on the downward revision of fuel prices, as well as the sector's union's refusal of dialogue. We wrap up our today's news with Western Sahara, where the military operations along the Wall of Shame are still ongoing. Units of the Sahrawi Liberation Army carried out new attacks against units of the Moroccan occupying forces in Al Mahbes sector, as well as Gerrat, Wild Blal and Sabjet Tanushad zones. That was it for our today's news. Thank you for tuning in.